Welcome to online worship here at the Laverne Church of the Brethren. My name is Amanda Bennett, and I am part of the staff at this amazing, inclusive, affirming, and peace-minded church. We are so glad that you've chosen to worship with us today. This morning, we will continue our sermon series entitled Troubling Theologies, as Carol Wise preaches on the power of purity. We want to make sure that you know what's going on in the life of the church. So here are a few announcements for you this day. On Sunday, August 27th, we're holding a free community-wide event called Peace Pancake Breakfast. It will be from 8 to 10 a.m. in the West Church parking lot. Please come and invite your friends and family. It's going to be a great time. Last week, the junior high and high school students of our congregation raised almost $1,000 to support the Trevor Project, a nonprofit that they are truly passionate about. The Trevor Project provides a crisis hotline and mental health services for LGBTQ young people. If you contributed to their fundraiser, thank you. There are many ways to stay connected in the happenings in our church community. And you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for our handle, which is @LaverneCOB. We also send out a monthly email that is full of information on what's going on in the life of the church. You can sign up to receive this email from the homepage of our website. Simply click on the button that says sign up for our monthly email and enter your information. Then look for our email in your inbox at the beginning of the month, and it'll be full of ways that you can stay connected to our church community. And now may we continue in a spirit of worship this day.
I'd like to move into call to worship, and we'll go with the wonderment. Let us sing for God's glory.
With reverence, let us sing for God's power.
With anticipation, let us sing for God's justice. And now, will you join me? Gracious God, for the glories of creation, for the power of your healing presence, for the saving work of justice and the inspiration of your saints, we give you thanks. Be present in our worship, we pray. May our songs, our prayers, our hopes, and our lives sing of your glory and your love. Amen. also Psalms 1 through 18, Psalms 10, 1 through 18. Why do you stand aloof, Adonai? Why do you seem to hide yourself in times of trouble? The violent arrogantly pursue the weak and catch them in craftily designed schemes. The impious boasts of the desires of their hearts. They bless greed, yet renounce you, Yahweh. With their noses in the air, they never seek you. They think and say, there is no God. Though their ways always prosper, your judgments are on high, out of their sight. Haughtily they keep your laws far away from themselves, and they sneer at all their enemies. They think in their hearts, we will not be moved throughout all generations. We'll be happy and untroubled. Their mouths are filled with cursing and deceit and oppression. Under their tongues are mischief and iniquity. They sit in ambush in villages. They ambush the innocent and murder them. They stalk their victims in secret. They lie in wait like a lion in the bushes. They lie in wait to catch the helpless. They catch the poor by drawing them into their nets. Their victims are crushed. They collapse and fall under their oppressor's strength. But the violent only say, God has forgotten. But the violent only say, God has forgotten, or God is looking the other way and will never see this. Wake up, Yahweh. O God, lift up your hand. Don't forget those who are helpless. Why do the violent renounce you, God? Why do you say in their hearts, you won't call me into account? Why do you see? But you do see. You see every trouble, every cause for grief. You ponder it, take it into your hands. The helpless commit themselves to you. You are the helper of the orphan. Break the arm of the violent and the evildoer. Seek out corruption till you find no more. You will rule forever and ever, Yahweh, and those who don't acknowledge you will perish from the land. Yahweh, you hear the desire of the meek. You strengthen their hearts and bend your ear to them, to do justice to the orphan and the oppressed, so that those born of earth may strike terror no more.
Well, this morning I was intending on talking about purity and how certain Bible verses have been used to rationalize and further theological perspectives built primarily upon shame. They have spawned a whole arena of sexual purity that has promoted things like purity rings and chastity pledges and a commitment by young adults to stop dating and only court someone whom they strongly intended to marry. Almost a whole generation of people coming of age in the 1990s and 2000s, and particularly young women, were impacted by this purity movement, many of whom I would contend have suffered lasting harm. So that's what I was going to talk about, and still will in the near future, because it's interesting and important and touches on things that the church is often reluctant to talk about, but we're almost all fascinated by. But as I was trying to write about purity, I realized that as a result of something that recently happened to me and that I still carry on my face, I needed to say something different this morning. So I have temporarily abandoned purity. And instead, I want to talk about walking Maisie. I'm deeply grateful to Julie Kurtz, who reminded me recently that, quote, walking can be hazardous to your health. Her sage advice came about 5 days too late, after I had already rather ignobly tumbled face first onto the sidewalk while on a nighttime walk with the Evans dog, my enthusiastic canine buddy, Maisie. Now, I don't think that I have ever actually done an all-out face plant before. Sure, I've tripped and fallen, but I've always managed to break the fall somehow so that I didn't just land smack on my face. Not this time. I must say that it really hurt when I landed. I was grateful for the cover of night, which gave me some time to just sort of lay there for a while and quietly whimper in peace. In the days following my fall, I rather marveled at the vibrant colors that greeted me each morning when I dared to look in a mirror. It has all been a new experience for me. I had a black eye once, but never two at the same time, and never quite so, noticeable. Some people have asked me, how does the other guy look? And I can only say that, surprisingly, the concrete seems solidly intact. Now, I mentioned Maisie. I confess that I have never really been a dog person. Being a tad cynical by nature, I have always preferred the aloofness and sly ways of cats. But Maisie and I have formed a lovely little bond, and we usually walk every morning and every evening in a loop around our neighborhood. I'm still adjusting to the fact that I am now an informal member of the community of dedicated dog walkers. To my shock, there's a lot of us out there, which I'm sure many of you already know. I've learned that there are certain rules and a certain etiquette to dog walking. The humans generally greet one another or exchange pleasantries as we draw near. Depending upon the situation, we then either stop to give the dogs an opportunity to say hello to one another or carefully move to the other side of the street. After months of this, I still can't tell you the names of most of the people that I meet, but I know the names of almost all the dogs, how old they are, what kind they are, what their temperament is like, where they live, and so forth. And I understand this is not unusual. So after I fell, I continued to walk Maisie every morning and evening. And I saw the same set of people that we usually saw as we went on our route. As per our custom, we even stopped to chat with some of them. And the thing that both perplexed and disturbed me was that during these encounters, not one person asked me what had happened to my face or expressed any concern. I looked as though I had gone 10 rounds in a boxing ring, yet we proceeded with our conversation as if I looked perfectly fine. I didn't know what to think about this, and I still don't know what to think about this. These are, by and large, lovely people. They are friendly. They love their pets. They enjoy and care about their neighborhood and are fastidious about always cleaning up after their dog. I have never heard an unkind word spoken, and they have always said endearing things about Maisie. But there is something deeply broken here, isn't there? How could they stay silent quite literally in the face of such great need? Were they embarrassed for me? But why? Were they afraid of what I might tell them? Leery about getting involved? Just uncomfortable and not sure what to do? To compound things, when I shared this experience about my dog walking with friends, the very first response that almost everyone made was to offer excuses and rationales for this lack of response. My favorite, maybe they thought you were just kind of bad at makeup. You know, it's not only the silence of these fellow dog walkers that disturbed me. I found myself in these encounters somehow feeling compelled to explain what had happened to my face. And so I would do that. I would make sure that I shared my woeful story with them. Some of this was perhaps altruistic in that I wanted to alleviate any awkwardness that they might feel or to set them at ease. But when I really looked inside, I realized that it wasn't all just altruistic in nature. I also wanted these people to know that I looked like I looked because I was clumsy and had tripped, and not because I was a victim of violence. Mostly, I didn't want them to think that I was one of those women who got beat up in her own home. That felt too scary, too demeaning, too vulnerable somehow. And so I found myself sharing a lot of information about what had happened to me with people who had not really expressed an interest or concern. I'm not proud of my behavior. I can see that my impulse and actions were designed to help distance myself from those who are victims of interpersonal violence. I didn't want to carry what I perceived as being the shame of such victimization or of being broken somehow. And in so doing, I betrayed sisters and brothers and siblings who are not safe in their own homes or neighborhoods or workplaces or even churches. And I regret that very much. According to the Center for Disease Control, in the United States, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men will experience physical violence by their intimate partners at some point in their lives. Transgender people are particularly vulnerable. 1 in 3 women and 1 in nearly 6 men will experience some sort of sexual violence in their lifetimes. The National Coalition Against Domestic Violence notes that on average, nearly 20 people per minute in the United States are physically abused by an intimate partner, or more than 10 million women and men per year. We know that children who witness domestic violence often become victims of violence themselves and are at greater risk for adverse outcomes like anxiety, impaired development, academic problems, substance abuse, aggression, and depression. It is sobering. As a people who seek to model ourselves after the life of one who denounced violence, reached out to those in the margins, violated restrictive and hurtful social rules, and called us to build the kingdom of heaven here on earth, these statistics and realities push us to consider what we need to do in order to be a community of safety, support, care, advocacy, and love for those experiencing interpersonal violence. Now, I'm not one who believes that things happen for a reason, but I am one who believes that it is possible to learn from an experience, even a hard or unpleasant experience, like slamming into concrete. What I have learned from this particular experience is threefold. The first lesson for me is the importance of breaking the silence, to express concern, to actually see and acknowledge those in front of us who appear hurt or broken or in need, to not allow politeness or fear or indifference to hinder us from caring about the well-being of another and reaching out. Someone who is experiencing violence may not feel safe or able to tell us what is happening, but at least they know that we have seen them, and that we care. There is something sacred about being seen, something holy about being clear-eyed about our potential to do real harm to one another. The second lesson for me is a call to wrestle with this notion of victimization as a source of shame. Why does our culture instill such a response? Who does it protect? Who does it diminish? What does this kind of shame do to all of us, to our relationships, to those who are vulnerable, to those who are confronted with vulnerability, and to our well-being as a beloved community? I am mindful of the many ways that our theologies have contributed to this linking of shame and victimization. After all, our major claim about Jesus is not that he was a victim of Roman power and empire, but rather that he was crucified to save people from their sins and that he rose victorious even over death. What does that say to someone who is not able to rise victorious, to someone who is broken by violence? Perhaps we need to reconsider our understanding of the meaning of Jesus' suffering and death. And the third thing that I am carrying away from this experience is the need to very, very consciously claim solidarity with victims of violence and not actively seek to distance myself from those who are hurting or in danger. Instead of simply assuring my neighbors that I had a, quote, legitimate accident and was not one of those women, maybe I could have said something like this to them. I know that my face looks bad, and perhaps you are concerned that I am in a dangerous situation. I want to reassure you that I am not, even though I know that there are many people who are and who need our support and understanding. Here's what happened to me. Thanks to Walking Maisie, I've had a lot to think about during this past week, especially about what it means to be broken people. I've come to understand that sometimes the brokenness is written all over a person's face. Sometimes the brokenness is in the silence and in the awkwardness of bystanders. Sometimes it's in the fear and shame of being seen as broken. And sometimes it's even embedded in our theologies and understandings about what it means to be human, what it means to be God, and what we owe to one another. And I wonder what it would be like if we could transform our mutual brokenness into mutual care and healing. I am reminded of a poem of one of my favorite poets, Jimmy Santiago Baca. Santiago Baca was born in New Mexico, and he was abandoned by his parents when he was 2 years old. He wound up in an orphanage, and he eventually ran away from there and lived on the streets at the young age of 13. As an adult, he did prison time for drug possession, and while he was there in prison, he taught himself how to read and write, and he also began to compose beautiful poetry. In a poem titled, "What is Broken is What God Blesses," Santiago Baca offers these words. What is broken, God blesses, not the perfectly brick-on-brick prison, but the shattered wall that announces freedom to the world, proclaims the irascible spirit of the human rebelling against lies, against betrayal, against taking what is not deserved. The human complaint is what God blesses. In our brokenness thrives life, thrives light, thrives the essence of our strength. Each of us a warm fragment, broken off from the greater ornament of the unseen, then rejoined as dust to all this is. Thanks be to God. May the boldness of God's Spirit transform us. May the gentleness of God's Spirit lead us. May the gifts of God's Spirit be our goal and our strength, now and always. Go in peace. Amen.